Hey guys, welcome back to Banter Bets and BPL. Just Liam here today. Going to be doing a quick run through of the fantasy game week 1, running through the games, notable performances, bad performances, who to pick up, who to drop, and who to be proud that you drafted and who to be mad that you drafted. So we're just going to do that really quick. And then later on, we're going to have our Game Week 2 preview, our betting preview with Brother Keegs and all the guys. So we'll just get started right away. Jump in with Arsenal 3, Fulham 0 at Craven Cottage. Better performance than I expected from Arsenal, and a better performance from a lot of their fantasy players than I expected. We'll start with Fulham because the list is very small. The only notable that I had is they started Kamara up front. Kamara, probably Kamara. Watching too much football. Kamara started up front for Fulham in place of Mitrovic. I don't expect that to continue for long. Mitrovic actually scored a midweek in the cup this week, so I'm sure he'll be back soon. I know the forward waiver wire is depleted, so if you wanted to take a flyer on Kamara and drop some dirty garbage that you have in your forward 3 position, then go ahead. But I wouldn't be too excited about that. I wouldn't be absolutely running to the wire I need Kamara. Let's talk about Arsenal, because Lacazette started and scored. I didn't think Lacazette would start, but he did start. And if he's starting for them, then that's someone that you're happy that you drafted because you probably got him at a bit of a discount. And if he's starting, that's a good-looking attack, and he is the striker in that good-looking attack. So it's not a hard formula, guys. Good players in good positions for good teams are good players to own. Speaking of which, Willian had a big performance. He had 3 assists in this game. He's not going to do that again this season. I'm just going to go out there and say that. He won't have another 3-assist game. But he is part of a good attack, and he's a good-ish player. I'm not crazy on Willian in terms of fantasy. I think he's a bit more of a contributor in real life than fantasy, but he's an attacker that looks like he can't be dropped after getting 3 assists, so he's going to be playing probably for the foreseeable future, so be happy if you have him. A guy who might be available is Gabriel, the center back. He started, he scored, and I'm all for picking up these Arsenal defenders that started, guys. So Gabriel especially, people might rush to get him because he scored, but he's not going to be scoring every week. I'd be more focused on getting Maitland-Niles if you can. Bayern played well. Then Gabriel and Holding are also good pickups because they started, right? They started and got a clean sheet. Means they'll probably start again. Might not get a clean sheet again, but you want players on big teams, big 6 teams that are playing. So go grab those guys that are available. Saints lost 1-0 to Palace. Southampton looked all right. Huayta had a pretty good game in the Palace net. So if you drafted him, he looked pretty good. Palace looked pretty solid defensively. I still think all their defenders are streamers based on matchups. I don't think anyone jumps out as a guy you want to own for the rest of the season, but except for Guaita, of course. But yeah, they look solid. Their attack looks more fun than I expected. Palace kind of is always traditionally a little bit, I'd say, boring. Don't usually know where their goals are going to come from because their best player, Zaha, isn't a traditional goal scorer, really. But he did score in this game, scored a nice goal, had chances to score many more. So their attack looks fun, guys. If you drafted Zaha, I'm probably happy with that, provided he doesn't leave, which I don't think he does because he does this same song and dance every year. Look at me, poor Wolf Zaha. I have to play for Crystal Palace. I'm so much better than this. But guess what, Zaha? You're not better than this because you've never proven to be better than that. If you were, someone would take on a chance on you, but they're not going to. So stay there, play good for Palace. That's perfectly fine, okay? Eberechi Eze, don't know, that probably wasn't said correctly, but he came off the bench. He was a little bit of a sleeper buzz. Came off the bench and I thought looked really fun. I think it was Walker Peters that he made fall down with the move, so that's fun. he should be amusing to watch, guys. So if you drafted him, I drafted him, I'm excited to watch him again. In a better than expected attack, I think. That also signed Batshuayi. Speaking of which, I still think Jordan Ayew is the forward to own for Crystal Palace. Batshuayi, I know he's coming from Chelsea, but he's not very good at Chelsea. He hasn't really been that good anywhere. And Ayew was really good for Palace last season. So I don't see any reason to expect Batshuayi to come in and just own that spot. For Southampton, not much. Shay Adams looked pretty good. He was getting the chances. So if you drafted him, he was a bit of a sleeper too. If you drafted him, I'd feel good about that. If you drafted Redmond, I like Redmond. Always liked him as a player. Plays obviously high up the pitch. He's one of the forwards. So I don't mind him in an attack that I think will be better most days than they were today. Not too much else to note on Southampton. Palace. Let's jump to a fun game. Liverpool beat Leeds 4-3 with a couple penalties from Salah. Not much on Liverpool, guys. We didn't learn much from them this game. They have Salah, Mane, Firmino. Those are the guys you want to own. Their midfield isn't really ownable. I noticed Keita did start. If I'm going to pick up a midfielder, I don't mind an opportunistic Keita pickup because I think he's got the best attacking potential out of their midfielders. It's just a matter of if he's going to play consistently, which I don't think he will, but it might be worth a shout just in case he plays next game. And it's Liverpool, so goals do come from their midfield. It's hard to predict, but goals will come from there. I think Keita is the best bet. The bigger news, we learned a lot about Leeds, and we learned that Leeds have a nice attack. They scored 3 times at Anfield. So what you're going to want to do is go grab a piece of that attack, okay? Bamford is the man that you want to own. You also want to own Harrison, Pablo Hernandez, Helder Costa, Click. I think it's Click, I don't know, but grab one of those front 4 because they look like they mean business. They look like scoring goals. So why not go grab one of those attackers and see what happens? Again, I wouldn't be going crazy. It kind of reminds me a bit of, Norwich was scoring goals last year. So everyone was running to grab the Cantwells, the Steepermans, the Buendias. Everyone was going crazy about Pookie. So I wouldn't have crazy expectations for this Leeds team because we know how those Norwich guys ended up. They didn't produce like that for most of the season. But I think it's a good idea to try and jump on Leeds, see if they keep scoring goals. Rodrigo gave away a penalty, didn't look as good as Bamford. It's what we were saying. Bamford's the guy. The manager trusts him. Rodrigo, I know he's fast in FIFA. That doesn't mean he's going to be a better fantasy player. So if you drafted Bamford, then good for you. If you drafted Rodrigo, probably much higher than Bamford got drafted, then probably should have done your homework there, Cody. Newcastle, West Ham. West Ham are garbage. They looked awful. That's the only note I have on West Ham. They looked awful. So if you drafted Antonio and Bowen, I wouldn't panic too much. West Ham do have tough fixtures coming up, but I think they play better against the good teams. So I wouldn't be looking to necessarily bench those 2 guys. I would be benching their defenders for sure against these teams. Don't own any of their defenders. Be benching Fabianski. But I think the guys I like on that team are Souček, Antonio, Bowen. I still think that they're going to be good this season. People say Souček's a center defensive mid. He is not. He gets into the box. He loves score. You can just tell he wants to score headers. He's so good at attacking the aerial ball. He's not a center defensive mid, guys. It's okay to own Souček. He's a good player. Jeff Hendrick, goal and an assist. Jeff Hendrick isn't a typical fantasy mid that you want to own. He's not super creative. He's not super flamboyant. He's not a flair player, but he can still be an effective player. He's going to be at the top of everyone's list because people just go, oh, who scored the highest this week? Oh, wow, Hendrick, 14 points or whatever he got. I'm going to add him. So if you really want him, you're probably going to have to put him as your first priority, which I don't know if that's awesome because he's not going to score an assist every week. Sorry to break it to you guys. I still think if you got some garbage on the end of your bench, which you probably do, because I doubt everyone drafted 5 midfielders that looked great. this weekend. I don't think Hendrick is a bad pickup to see. He'll probably keep playing. You can't drop him after that. Newcastle's attack, it's not amazing. It looked all right this weekend. But if you want to pick him up to see if he can keep it going, I don't mind it. I wouldn't make fun of you. Carroll, Andy Carroll started. He looks effective. You know what you're getting from him. He's going up for headers. He's causing havoc in the opposition box. If he's playing, then I want to own him, right? Like with any forward. If any forward's playing consistently, then that's a forward to own, right? Considering how thin the waiver wire is. So I don't mind him as a pickup as well. Leicester beat West Brom 3-0. Couple Vardy penalties. Obviously, Vardy's the best player in that game, one of the best fantasy players in the game, and the guy you want to own. After Vardy, I think the next best player on Leicester to own is Harvey Barnes. Barnes looked really good. He's a direct player. He's quick. He's young. He's improving still. But if you drafted Barnes, then good on you, because I really like how he looks. I don't love Maddison. I didn't really want to draft him, and I feel the same way now. He was on the bench to start. If you did draft Maddison, you do like him, that's fine. I wasn't too high, but I wouldn't take this game as a worry because Maddison is working his way back to full fitness. He will be a starter on this team, obviously. I don't think he'll be the best midfielder on this team, though. I think that's going to be Barnes. In terms of defenders, Leicester defenders, yeah, go own them, guys. I know Ndidi played defense, so the only Leicester defenders you really want to own right now are James Justin, who got an assist, Castagna, who got a goal, and Soyuncu, who got the clean sheet. So I like those guys. Love Castagna. He gets forward a lot. If you drafted him, good job. If Justin is still somehow available on waivers in your league, then yeah, go grab him. Run, don't walk. He's not an amazing player, but he's going to be playing. He's going to be locked in the next 6 weeks or so, 6 game weeks until Pereira gets back. And I'm sure Pereira will take his place back, but even then, you never know with injured guys coming back how long it's going to be. Spurs lose at home 1-0 to Everton. Spurs are not good. They have good players that you want to draft in fantasy, and you feel really good when you draft them because they're Spurs forwards that you got late in the first round, but then they just look like garbage. And I'm talking about Harry Kane because I got him late in the first round. Thought it was a steal. Still think it's a steal, but my optimism is wavering a little bit as long as Jose Mourinho is their coach because they just don't attack and they don't score goals. Well, I'm sure they will score goals, but you know what I mean. They're not a free-flowing team that they were under Pochettino. So owning your Kanes and your Sons might be a little bit painful this year, guys. Sorry to say. Obviously, you still want to keep those guys, and you never want to sell low on any of those guys. Don't be looking to trade those guys right away. Never sell low in fantasy because you're not going to get value back. You know, fantasy prem, it can change like that. Week to week, it can change. So don't ever sell low. In terms of Everton, actually, one more thing on Spurs. Lucas started over Bergwijn. That was interesting. I thought Bergwijn would be starting. I wouldn't feel bad if I'm a Bergwijn owner because I still think that Mourinho is going to rotate. And also Spurs looked bad, so why not try and switch things up and get players who are going to play better into the team. Into the team like Bergwijn over Lucas. Outside of that, you know, they started Ali, didn't look great. You're going to keep him though. Nothing really else with Spurs. I feel bad for Doherty. Why did you leave Wolves, Doherty? There's so much more fun attacking than Spurs. If you are a Doherty owner, obviously you're not feeling as good that he's on Spurs, but I still like him as an attacking threat. Everton, Mina started. Didn't think he would. Don't think he's a good player. Think Holgate's a much better defender. But if you drafted Mina, or if you want to go pick him up, he is a bit of an aerial threat. Maybe he'll score you a header. I don't necessarily pick up defenders banking on them scoring headers. I don't think that's very smart, but Mina is a bit of an aerial threat. I don't think he sticks in the lineup, so I'm not too in love with him as a pickup. But, you know, Everton looked better, so you probably want a piece of that defense. And if he's available, yeah, why not take a flyer? One player I do love from Everton's defense is Luca Digne. He's great. He's an awesome attacker. Gets forward a lot. Everton might be better this season based on how this week looked. I know it's still early. But yeah, if you drafted him, good on you. He was one of the guys I wanted that I wasn't able to get. The Everton strikers, unlike the Tottenham strikers, looked good. Calvert-Lewin, I think, was a steal if you drafted him anywhere outside the first 3 rounds this year. I think he's going to be, maybe 15 goals this year, which is great for a fantasy striker. Richarlison also is really good, something different from Calvert-Lewin. Those two have a great partnership. I would be very happy if I'm owning any of those two. In terms of, new midfield for Everton, yeah. So their brand new midfield started. Rodriguez, Doucouré, Allen. I don't think Doucouré and Allen are guys you want to own. Rodriguez, for sure, yeah. I was a little bit skeptical if he'd be good. He started, looked all right, looks better than Sigurdsson. He does the same things as Sigurdsson, just better. So own him. If you drafted Sigurdsson, like me, then you're probably going to want to think about dropping Sigurdsson for a hotter waiver pickup, like Hendrick, like one of the Leeds midfielders, like any of those guys, because I just don't think Sigurdsson's going to play, guys. And you don't want to be hanging on to these guys like, oh, man, this guy was good 5 years ago in fantasy. I'm going to hold him for the first 5-6 weeks, and then they're scoring 0 for you for those 5-6 weeks, and you're missing out on a bunch of good pickups that are emerging because you're too stubborn to say goodbye and admit that you drafted a bad player. Don't be stubborn. If you drafted a bad player, drop him. It's not the end of the world, okay? You don't need to show too much faith in these guys like Sigurdsson, like your Ozils, that type of player. Pedigree guys that are past it. Wolves, 2-0 over Sheffield. Looked really good. I liked Wolves this year. Jimenez is one of the best strikers in the Premier League. He's better than Ings, Keegan. Saiss looked good. He scored. He could have scored a couple. You definitely want a piece of this Wolves defense, guys. Marcal started. So that's Marcal. I don't know how to say that. You want him. You want Cody. You want Boley. You want Jimenez. Saiss. But all those guys were probably owned anyway. If by some miracle they're not, then go pick one of them up and ride it out, because those guys are Wolves is an awesome team. Simple as that. Podence and Neto did start. If these guys are going to be starting consistently, I want a piece of that Wolves attack. So those might be opportunistic pickups as well. I know they both came off, and I know they've never really had permanent places. With Jota, maybe Traore plays further up next time, or as one of the forwards. You never really know. If you want to take a flyer on Podence or Neto, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, but I don't think they'll be consistent starters. I think there's better pickups that will be consistent starters. Chelsea, last game, Chelsea beat Brighton 3-1. We'll start with Brighton. My note for Brighton is I really like Tariq Lamptey, and that is a player that I didn't know who he was last year. I may have chirped him and said, what the hell is this guy doing playing? And I did not know what I was talking about, because he looks good. He came from Chelsea. He's a fullback that attacks. I don't really love owning players on mid-table to low-table teams, defenders on mid to low-table teams for the rest of the season. But if he's going to be attacking as much as he was in this game, then I think he's not a bad fifth defender or fourth defender to keep around, and not necessarily, start him on the good weeks. Don't start him against the good teams. Start him against the worst teams. But I like him as an attacking fullback. So Lamptey is good. Let's move on to Chelsea, because speaking of attacking fullbacks, Reece James looks great. If you drafted him, give yourself a pat on the back. If you drafted Zuma, give yourself a pat on the back. Week 1 returns are big time. Looks like Zuma's going to be playing. Looks like James, he better be playing after that goal he scored. Christensen played. Why not take a flyer on these guys? They're a top 6 team, a big 6 team, better be top 6. You want their defenders. These are the defenders that, yes, you can own all season, and you don't really have to worry about streaming, okay? So you want some of these guys. So Christensen, yeah, he might not play. Silva might come in. Until I see it happen, why not try? Why not have him? Because worst case scenario, drop him for a hot pickup. Best case scenario, he keeps his spot, and that team defends a little better and keeps some more clean sheets, right? Jorginho, he's going to be a hot pickup. I don't necessarily want him. He does score penalties. So that's good. If they get a penalty, you know he's probably going to score it. I don't think he's going to create much from open play. But you know, if you got trash at the end of your midfield, then yeah, maybe give Jorginho a try. Loftus-Cheek started. I like Loftus-Cheek. Don't think he played very well. He seems like a candidate to drop out when they've got their Pulisic back, or maybe they want to shift things around. Start Hudson-Odoi. I don't think Loftus-Cheek is long for that starting lineup, so I'm not huge on him. Werner looked sharp. He's obviously the forward to own for Chelsea. We know this. This isn't a surprise. Abraham and Giroud owners. Maybe you hold those guys for a couple weeks, especially Abraham. Abraham's a good striker to own still. Giroud is probably not, but Werner's obviously the guy there. And that is about it for this little waiver wire rundown, guys. Those are the guys that did good, the guys that did bad. Remember, don't just go to the waiver wire and sort by top point scorers this week, okay? Take a look at players that played. Maybe they didn't score, but maybe they're part of an attack that you want, like a Leeds Attack. Maybe a player didn't score that you want. Like a Wolves Attack. He started, maybe I'll take a flyer on him, even if he didn't score. Like a Keita from Liverpool. He started, he could score in the future, right? Because you're picking them up now. Their fantasy points in the past don't mean anything. It's looking forward, always looking forward at what they're going to be doing in the coming weeks. Is this guy in a good spot to produce? Is he going to remain in the starting lineup? Is he playing for a good enough team? These are all things that you have to consider, okay? So don't look back, look forward. And this is something you can take advantage of because everyone's going to be rushing to the waiver wire and picking up your Hendricks, your Harrisons from Leeds if he's not already on a team. Your Reece James, your Saiz, those guys are probably owned already, but you know what I mean. These guys that put up big weeks. So now is the time to look at a little deeper the players who played and are in a better spot. And those are guys you can pick up because they might have value in the future. Okay. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. We're going to be on later on with maybe tonight, tomorrow with Brother Keegs and the boys looking ahead to our bets for next weekend. This coming weekend, game week 2 of the Prem, we're finally going to get to see Manchester United players in action, Man City players in action, Burnley players in action, for those of you who are excited about that. But mostly the Manchester clubs are going to be fun to watch, and you'll get your good fantasy players back that you drafted there. So have a good rest of the week, guys. Be active on that waiver wire because that's where leagues are won and lost. And stay safe out there. Peace out.